Welcome to the Pooch Parenting Podcast, a podcast for parents with dogs. I'm Michelle Stern, a certified professional dog trainer, mom, and former teacher. Living with kids and dogs at the same time can feel like a circus. I know because I lived it too. Join us as we interview a variety of experts and parents to discuss topics that will make parenting with dogs easier, safer, and less chaotic. Also, you can love living with your dog again. I'll always keep it real, which might even mean that you hear the messiness of life in the background on occasion, but at least you know you're not alone. I'm so pleased to share this week's episode with you. I get to talk to my friend Miranda about reactive rescues and how challenging they can be in families with children. We talk about lots of ideas for how to keep everyone safe and happy, dogs included, of course. Enjoy! Hi, Miranda. I have been looking forward to talking with you for as long as this podcast has been in existence.
Hi, Michelle. It's so nice to be here. Wow, I was really excited when you invited me to come on.
Oh my gosh. Well, it was a great excuse to hang out with you because you and I are friends and we have been online friends for quite a while and sharing our journeys together and helping each other out with just moral support as we have become professional dog trainers. And we also have your sister in common, which was such a funny revelation. I met your sister a million years ago when I was a food blogger, when I had my cooking school for kids. And so to meet you and realize that you were Amy's sister was such a fun, wonderful, felt like kismet.
Yeah, it was like a small world moment. It was like, yeah. And then I got connected with you and started following you. And it was great to have that supportive finding the other supportive dog trainers is nice, where you can, it's not competition. It's just, hey, we're all in this together to help dogs, right?
Well, and you know what? There are so many dogs that need our help. And so I really am very excited that through the podcast and through Facebook and stuff, I am building this little group of friends that I trust who specialize in all kinds of different topics. And so when people say to me, I have a rescue dog that's reactive, I don't even have to think about it before I say, Miranda's your girl. That's who I'm sending you to. So I love that we can do this for each other, that, we don't have to be an expert in every topic that relates to dogs. And that in fact, it's better if we specialize in one or two things, and then we can send the other folks to our good friends who are good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, whenever somebody comes across my path that has dogs and kids, even though I do I also enjoy that area. I'll send them your way because you have the most resources and when you specialize, right, that really allows you to, get really good at one thing, right? Not try to do everything.
Yeah, that's my goal anyway. I hope that it comes across that way. So today we're going to talk about reactive dogs and families with children and how we can sort of juggle that together, because it can lead to a lot of fear in parents that maybe our dog is barking and lunging on leash. And not only is that embarrassing, but we're worried about the safety of our baby in the stroller, or we're worried that maybe our dog, if we're wearing our baby, that our dog will pull us over. Or even at home, let's say a guest comes by and our dog has stranger danger and we're not really sure what to do about that. And we don't want our kids to get sort of caught in that crossfire of fear and worry with our dog. So we're going to talk about all of those things today with you because this is your jam, but I want you to introduce yourself before we go any further.
Absolutely. So I'm Miranda, as Michelle said. I'm a certified professional dog trainer. I've worked with dogs for as long as I can remember. So at least 20 years. I started out with volunteering and rescue, and then trained my dogs in agility when I was a teenager and got really into that, which started really my passion for training. And I'm also a veterinary technician, so I did my degree in to do that and practiced. I also have experience working in veterinary hospitals and with a holistic approach. So that's something I integrate as well into my training, is looking at everything from a whole body viewpoint. So body, mind, and spirit of the dog. And I've specialized in working with rescue dogs because rescue dogs, I've always had rescue dogs. It's my passion, and specifically reactivity because it's an area that there's a big need in that area. And a lot of dogs I find are rescue dogs have issues around reactivity, and it's something that causes them to be rehomed a lot. So yeah, it's something I have personal experience with, and I feel for the people because I know it's really, really hard to manage a reactive dog. And so yeah, it's what I feel I'm dedicated to working on with people.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that I love about you is that you're kind and non-judgmental. And so families that may be wondering if they're in over their head or if they've made a mistake by choosing this particular dog, they need a lot of support and compassion. And so, of course, you need to have the dog training skills. That's obviously very important because we need to give the dog tools and give the humans that, to equip them for helping ensure that the behavior changes. But really, you just have to offer so much comfort to the people as they go through this experience. I think it's pretty similar to what I'm doing, where families have a lot at stake when they've got kids and a dog, because a mistake could be a life-altering experience, right? And so you and I think, share that in common, that we just really want people to feel loved and supported through the work that we do together.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, a lot of times I feel like we get this misconception that we're dog trainers, but really we're people coaches that help people train their dogs, right? And so if you have to approach it with an attitude of understanding, meeting people where they're at, and not layering on your expectation of what they should be doing or should not be doing, really giving them the support to make the best decision that's going to work for them and their family, and asking, is this doable for you? Like, this is the situation. This is what the dog is seeing in this situation. And this is how we can approach it. But is that manageable for you? Does that meet you? Can you handle this? And is that going to negatively affect your life as well? Right? Considering like the whole family.
Yeah. Let's dive into that.
For the dog and the person, the family, that's what matters as well.
I love that. Let's dive into that specifically, because I feel like one's capacity to cope is the first thing we really have to think about, because my mentor taught me that it's not just about, can the person learn the skills to fix a problem, but do they have the devotion and the time that it takes to actually implement those? How do we help a family decide when maybe a certain kind of reactivity feels just too overwhelming, or when it might be unsafe to our kids? Let's start there, and then we'll get to the easier, lighter stuff about like, how do we walk a reactive dog?
Yeah,
so let's start with the biggie first.
Yeah, so for me, it's really looking at what like defining reactivity, right? So is this a case where it's just a dog that's a little crazy on leash and wants to see all the other dogs and say hi, but it's really, really friendly, so that's very, very low risk? Is it a dog that is reactive and aggressive to other dogs? That's kind of the next level up. And then is there any human issue? So reactivity is this really broad subject that can mean a dog that's just super over friendly, out of control, or it can mean a dog that is reactive, as in reactive potentially will bite a human. So there's a big spectrum here, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it really depends on what we're looking at as far as what the degree of manageability is. And that's always the first thing I'm looking as, what's the level of safety risk here, right? And especially when there's any family members involved, or any children, in a family involved.
Right.
It's always a risk assessment as to if it's safe, right? Because not, a big thing is not every dog is right for every home. Yeah. And that's one thing with rescue, where I work with a lot of rescues. Sometimes it's a little bit like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And it's just like this could work, but it's going to be hard. It's not quite the right fit. And some families are willing to do that. Some families are so like you said, dedicated. They have that level of, commitment. They love the dog so much. They want to make it work. And other families like realize, okay, maybe this is not the right fit for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that, especially in the pandemic too, so many people were rushing to get companion dogs because they have the time and energy to be with a dog, but then they're trapped at home with a dog that might be afraid of children, or
Absolutely.
or something else. And so they realize that maybe they brought home a creature that would be better suited living elsewhere. And there's no failure in that. I do mention that quite a lot, not because I want people to get rid of their dogs. I really don't.
Mhm.
And one of the whole reasons for the work that I do is to try to prevent that from happening.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
I do want people to understand that if they make that choice for their family, they're also making that choice for the dog, that maybe you're going to set that dog up for greater success in a household that is either quieter or that doesn't have cats, or that, whatever the situation may be, is an only dog household or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing lost, right? And I do see that cycle happen, and people take on a lot of that, like that guilt and shame about, especially with when we're looking at rescues, where there's a lot of pressure put on the family or people to help dogs, and you're doing this big thing and helping a dog, and then by relinquishing it, there's this shame associated with it, and really that doesn't benefit the person or the dog. It doesn't make them kind of want to try again.
Right.
Like, oh, that was such a negative experience. They feel so much shame, and it doesn't help the dog either, right?
Yeah.
So really, just recognizing that it's all learning, and there, you don't know any way, as much as you can try to know beforehand before getting the dog. What its temperament is like, or maybe it got temperament assessed in the shelter, or they say, oh, it's good with kids or cats. Until you have it in your home, until it like decompresses and comes down from all that shifting and changing, you don't really know what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so there's that piece where it's like, this is totally, not your fault. There's nothing here that's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And you did the best job that you could, because the people I work with, like they really want to do the best thing for the dog, but also their family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you talked about the range in behaviors that you could see with a dog that may have this label of being reactive, that it could just be a dog that's frustrated because you're not letting it say hi to every dog. And so they're pulling on the leash as a way of saying, but please, I really want to go over and say hi. And then they bark because they're just mad.
Right.
Versus the dogs that get joy from that pulling and chasing and lending, right? That those are in the minority, right? I do want to say that most dogs are doing that maybe out of fear, and they're trying to say, please go away. I'm going to be tough, so I want you to back off. But there are a few dogs that really find joy from that. And there is a very big difference in a dog who's reacting because it's fun and a dog who's reacting out of fear. And it's a lot easier to support a dog that's reacting out of fear because we can do exercises to build their confidence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
How does a family know the difference between those two?
A dog that's reacting out of fear or reacting out of fun. A lot of times it has to do with what the trigger of their reactivity is. So dogs that are doing it out of fun, it's generally like prey drivey. So they want to chase squirrels, or they want to chase cats. Sometimes even cars. Like there's often an element of fun, but sometimes it's an element of relieving frustration too.
Yeah.
And so so that one is more directed outwardly at triggers like cats and squirrels and things like that. Yeah, versus directed at other dogs or people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news. I like hearing that. And there are certain traits with dogs. You and I see this a lot with herding breeds, that there are a lot of behaviors that are ingrained in dogs because of the hundreds of years of breeding for that dog to do a certain job. So do you see any tendencies in some of these mixed breed dogs? So let's say, for example, the shelter has something that may be a shepherd mix or a herding breed mix. What kinds of behaviors can be predictable and challenging for families with dogs that have certain tendencies like that?
That's a really great question. I love you bring that up, because it's always, I feel like it surprises people when they bring home that, a cattle dog, and it's, wants to chase everything. and you look at it and go, this dog is bred to herd cows. So, really lots of intensity and drive and determination has been bred in it, like you said, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So I got so excited, I forgot your question. But so
Just
definitely
patterns. Yeah.
yeah, there's definite patterns around wanting to control movement. So they want to, anything that's moving that gets them excited and stimulated, and they need a proper outlet for that. So if they don't get a kind of acceptable, like in our world, acceptable outlet for that activity, then they often act out. So we label it as bad behavior, and it could come out as chasing cars or hurting the kids around the yard, or chasing the cat. And it's important to understand that that's very, very ingrained in their behavior. Now, not to say we can't put training in place, but they need a natural outlet for that behavior. So like teaching them to herd a stationary object, or teaching them to herd, get some sheep. No, just kidding. But, giving them something that they are able to use that instinct, and then also teaching them some really good skills. So how to leave something alone, how to have self-control, a good solid weight, cues that let them know when they're allowed to use that instinct and when they're not allowed to use that instinct. But it definitely is. It's definitely whenever you're seeing a dog that could have a herding breed in it, and you have children, it's good to keep in mind that that's going to be a little bit harder to manage in the average home.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a really common problem that we see dogs labeled as problematic, or their behaviors are problematic, when humans, not us directly, but humans have done this to these dogs. And yet then we become a victim of this pattern of breeding, right? And it's a little bit unethical, in my opinion, to try to train some of these ingrained behaviors out of these dogs, because that's who they are. And so I like that you talked about finding appropriate avenues for them to use those tendencies, because then you can celebrate their skills. I even learned recently about the sport that I was not familiar with before, and I think it's called Tribal.
Yeah.
So it's essentially dogs that they have these big balls, and they herd or push the ball into a goal. Is that right? Can you describe it? Is that what it is?
Essentially, yeah. So it's like those giant exercise balls, those big blue balls. Mine used to be blue that you do sit-ups on or whatever, and they teach them how to. You can teach the same herding cues that they would train with sheep, but obviously it's a lot easier to keep an exercise ball in your closet than to, like I was saying.
And is it a timed sport? So then it gets.
I'm really fuzzy on the rules.
Yeah,
you know that you teach herding cues, and that it is about getting the ball in a goal.
Okay.
I have never participated in it. No.
Me neither. I saw a demo of it somewhere, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a humane way to help a dog who has this drive to do these behaviors. And then they're more satiated, like they feel good in their body, instead of us feeling like they're bad dogs, right?
And absolutely, I love that you brought up like just how these in certain breeds, there's certain ingrained characteristics, and like you have a terrier, they need to hunt, and they need to have an instinct to search and hunt, and they're tenacious, and they need a natural outlet for that, right? So it's so important.
It's funny you said that, because I always walk him on a leash. And people just assume that because I'm a dog trainer that my dog can be off leash and that he's going to be fine. And he does have a good recall, and he is, we have our moments of good days and bad days with training being effective and not being effective, because I'm just a normal person. Absolutely. But I have a long line so that he can feel like he's free, but that if he should want to chase something that he sees, like squirrels, you nailed that, that I'm not going to lose him to being hit by a car or being eaten by a coyote, because those are two very prominent risks in my community that he could dash off and instinct kicks in. And I think that for people who have terriers, for example, getting hit by a car is a very common, unfortunate byproduct of the fact that they will do what they will do, and they don't know about cars, right? So
no, absolutely.
Okay. So obviously that's a good management tool, right? I'm using a long line. I'm allowing him to mostly be free, but yet he has a limit to that freedom. So let's talk about how we can apply some management to some of our dogs that are reactive in families with kids. So let's talk about stranger danger. I think that as the pandemic winds down, people will start to have friends over more often, slowly, but eventually that's going to happen. And children are going to come and visit so that your kids will resume a more social lifestyle or whatever. So not all children are savvy about how to be around dogs. And I'm going to make the assumption that some kids are used to hugging their own dog, which is a lot of dogs really don't like to be hugged. And so the problem is if a child at your house hugs your dog, that child is going to think it's okay to hug other dogs. And then they come to your house and you have a dog who has stranger danger, and your dog is going to really be very upset about that situation. So obviously we want to not put our dog in a position where it's going to be approached by this child who wants to go hug it. So how do we handle some of that stuff? And your mom, right? So I love this because you have a young child, and so you're going to be in the position where you're going to need to maybe set ground rules when he has buddies over, or you can help your clients even say, all right, let's be proactive and here's what I want you to do. So what would we do in the situation?
Yeah, so absolutely. So first thing I think of is always safety. And, I know you cover this, I'm sure, before, but always having an adult on the scene. Yeah. So I personally knew my dog was unsure about children. It would depend on, his level of comfort. So I would be there on the scene. I'd be watching for is he looking like loose and wiggly and happy, or is he looking a little bit stiff and unsure about the situation? And if he was looking stiff and unsure, I wouldn't even have him there. I mean, honestly, I would be putting him behind a baby gate and giving him a nice full stuffed Kong. And, so knowing sometimes even in advance, like if you know the situation this children is coming over, that is going to likely put my dog in a situation where he's going to be uncomfortable, I might just say, hey, let's just avoid that entirely, because this child is not living with me. Sometimes it's hard to tell other people's kids what they should and shouldn't do, right? Yeah. Whereas your own child, you can have those ground rules and they know what's expected. Like my son Alfie knows he doesn't hug Nellie. He doesn't approach her when she's eating. He knows he's not supposed to run by her, but that one's a hard one.
Yeah, that is hard because kids love to run and play.
Yeah. And so, but with another child, and if I knew my dog was not going to be comfortable, I would just avoid that situation. You're reducing the chance that your dog starts to develop more negative association with children. And like you said, you're also not having that child like hug a dog and have a potentially bad situation come out of it. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. So I know that I encounter parents who say they feel guilty separating the dog all the time, but yet at the same time, maybe we can just shift that mindset a little bit and say, actually, your dog is asking you for space. So instead of feeling guilty, you should actually feel really proud that you took action to prevent your dog from feeling badly, right? It's not, you're feeling guilty because you think the dog is being maybe punished by being separated, but in actuality, that's what they want. So you're actually doing the right thing. Does that sound right?
They want the space. A lot of dogs really want that space, and some of them are good about creating it themselves, right? Like they will say, okay, this situation is like, I know with my dog Nellie, she will move away. Like she'll go lie upstairs. If Alfie's running around in the main floor, she'll remove herself. Some dogs are great with that. They're like, this is the source of stress. I don't like this. I'm going to take the path of least resistance and move away. Yeah. And some dogs, they take the option of defending themselves. So they'll move into, they'll start to develop body language signals that they're uncomfortable, which children don't read very well, as you know, and then escalate to growling, snarling, snapping, as the situation, as they feel more stressed. So it's important, that we're our dog's advocate in these situations and just help them out so that they don't feel that need to get, to escalate the threat, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. That sounds really perfect. Okay. Let's move on to going outside. And this came up recently with a client of mine. Actually, I think she was a member in my membership community. And she was telling me that she has a dog who has reactive behaviors and is difficult on leash. And they have started walking the dog places where they're less likely to encounter other dogs, which I think is a great solution. Maybe at hours where there may be fewer dogs out, so they're not going necessarily at lunchtime when all the dogs are out for a potty break. They live in a city, in an urban environment, so there's not as many choices of where to go. And they have to go outside to go potty and stuff. So not walking isn't an option for them, but they're expecting a baby in a few months in the spring. And so one of their biggest worries was how to walk the dog and have a baby at the same time, because luckily, they're a couple. So there are two people. And we talked about options such as, have one of you stay home with the baby and one of you walk the dog, or have one of you push the stroller while the other person holds the leash, so that one person isn't juggling that whole situation. But there are some people, I have clients that maybe have a spouse that's in the military and is gone at extended periods of time, or that works a night shift. And so a lot of parents sometimes find themselves alone, and yet they have children and this dog that is unpredictable, and they're really worried about how to meet the needs of everybody and literally not be pulled into the street. So I know that loose leash walking is like the holy grail, and it's very difficult, and there's a million different strategies that people recommend, and there's nothing we can say that's going to answer that in 2 minutes or whatever. But do you have any tips for just how to make it less scary for these people as they're juggling the kids and this dog at the same time?
Yeah. So like about a million things went through my head when you were saying that.
Good. Okay, good.
But, the biggest thing is really taking the pressure off yourself. I feel like when you have kids and you have dogs, it can be a big thing where you're so focused on meeting the kids' needs and meeting the dog's needs that you forget about yourself. And so, definitely not putting so much pressure on yourself to have it perfect all the time. To make sure like 100% the dog is every second of the day. Prioritize your own needs, take care of yourself is really, really important. And, reach out and get support if you can. And if that's possible for you, to reach out to other people to get that support, with the dog. The other thing is that I always think about is that we get really stuck on dogs needing walks every day in order to meet their needs. And I used to subscribe to this as well. Like before I know what I know now is that, if I didn't walk my dog every day for an hour, at least an hour, I would feel bad about myself. I would feel like I wasn't meeting his exercise needs. And really, dogs, as long as they have a balanced approach to meeting their needs, which means they have some exercising of their body, they have a little bit of play, and some exercise of their brain, that can do it. Right. So it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to put yourself under pressure to walk the dog every single day. Yeah. And so in situations like, with a family, when there's not a lot of support, I would definitely look at what are some alternatives, right? So, if like you were saying with your client there, that there's not an option to take, to let the dog out in the backyard or use a indoor potty or something like that to minimize the chance of exposure, I would be doing short little pee breaks outside and much more enrichment and much more training and things like that inside to meet the dog's needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good, because I think that you're right. There's a big misconception about we have to do a walk and it has to be this distance and the dog has to be at my side the whole time. I mean, goodness knows, I use my long line a lot. I very rarely ask my dog to be at my side. And I sometimes literally, like, I give myself a time frame. Like I look at the watch and I'm like, okay, I got to be home by X amount of time. I'm going to let him tell us where we want to go. And it's really fun. It's neat to see. Is he going to turn left at the corner? Is he going to turn right at the corner? Is he going to, where does he want to explore? And he can't always make all the choices. We have to be safe and not walk in the middle of the road and obviously things like that. But it's nice for him to be able to have some autonomy in an agency in those decisions. And that is also very mentally satisfying, like you were talking about, as opposed to if a dog is just walking next to us for an hour, they're not actually very physically exercised, and they're certainly bored to death.
Yeah.
So it doesn't accomplish anything really except meet our own expectations of what we think a walk should be. And and one way that somebody phrased it, and it just kind of hit me over the head, which is that our dog, and this sounds really kind of terrible if you think about it, but our dog is living in our house almost like a caged bird or a hamster in a cage or whatever, that this is an animal and our house is the enclosure, and that's it. That's what they've got. They've maybe got the yard. If they're lucky, they get to go in the car or go for a walk, but really they're in our house and they're at their freedom or exposure to the real world is up to our discretion. Do they get to come? Do they not get to come? And so to not allow our dogs to sniff and explore the world when they're actually outside is doing them a huge disservice, because it's their only time to see what's going on outside and to get a break from your house. And that's not to say living at your house isn't wonderful. It probably is, but it's very confining and very limiting to most dogs.
Yeah, no. And I similarly had a brain melt when I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about, dogs as captive. Like they were saying, like our animals are dogs that we keep them as our pets, and they all have instinct. They need to have an outlet for their natural behavior. You would never keep, a tiger in a zoo and not give it some opportunity to chase or some opportunity to, to catch its food and have that instinct fulfilled. Right. And so with our dogs, we just expect that, okay, well, your little march around the block and your food in your food bowl is going to be, that's it. That should be good. Right. Yeah. And we should just, be okay the rest of the time, but really they have such a varied need. And like we say, depending on breed, for what's going to fulfill that and what's going to make them happy and their life enriched.
Yeah, I think I listened to that same podcast and just sat dumbfounded the rest of the day. Like, oh my gosh.
It was, but yeah.
I think it was Kim Brophy. She's amazing. I'm pretty sure it was Kim. She's going to come on and be a guest on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
And I am so excited to talk about that with her. Okay, this is really helpful. One last thing, again, about leash walking, because I do think that there are times where they do have to get out together.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any safety tips for a parent who has a baby and is walking a dog? Should they wear the baby? Should the baby be in a stroller? I know that some dogs are afraid of the stroller, and my biggest fear is that the leash will get caught in the wheels. So that is a concern for me. What would you recommend as being a good way to begin learning how to be out with the dog and baby at the same time in a way? If your dog, let's say, may be reactive or may react to a squirrel or another dog, what would you say might be a safe place to start with that?
Yeah. So first of all, knowing your dog, knowing what they react to is going to be really an important place to start, knowing the intensity of their reactions, and, considering safety as well. So certainly if your dog has any history of aggressing or redirecting, that would be a big safety thing in my mind. So ideally, like having two parents go out or two people go out. So again, that back asking for support from people would be really ideal, so that one person's pushing the stroller and the other person has control of the dog. A lot of reactive dogs, they do take your full attention and control, and it's also challenging if you're watching a baby to be environmentally aware of what your dog's triggers are, what's coming up in the environment. So that's a lot of multitasking, and certainly in the beginning, when you first have a baby home, that's a lot, right? Okay. Like I think we have a conception when we're pregnant and we're excited and we have a dog, we imagine those, like walking them together, and it's going to be a wonderful, amazing experience. And and it can be.
Mhm.
But in reality, it can also be challenging to manage everything, right? And be everything for everyone. Sometimes the
Mhm.
baby's going to be crying.
Mhm.
Sometimes the dog's going to stop and be using the bathroom, and it's a lot to manage, right? So if you can reach out and get support, that's really going to help.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's a perfect answer of like redirecting me back to helping people see that
Mhm.
it's not always what you wish it was.
Yeah.
And there's no shame again in hiring a dog walker or
No.
hiring a neighbor to sit with your
Mm-mm.
child, the baby, just sit and watch the baby sleep while you go and you walk your dog. Because my dog Barley is she has issues and she is muzzle trained so that I am less worried and I feel more
Yeah.
confident when I have her out in the world. But I literally need two hands on the leash.
Mhm.
And I am the kind of person that looks around every corner before I go around it because I do not want to be surprised by another dog right around that corner. So I am constantly looking. I feel like I'm part of a spy movie where I feel like I'm being chased and I'm looking over my shoulder and I'm looking around and I always have an escape route. And if I see another dog coming, I'm either crossing the street or doing an emergency U-turn and doing these kinds of dodging strategies to try to keep my dog from getting too close to these triggers. And that's a full-time, full
Yeah.
energy. I don't even like to walk her with Pippin because they have different needs, right? And
Mhm.
it's really hard even just walking two dogs at a time, let alone having a baby who
Oh, yeah.
might need to eat spontaneously in the middle of a walk or something like that. So I think it is okay to not try to pursue the dream of what I wish it was, that
Mhm.
we're just happily walking with the cup of coffee in the stroller holder and we're drinking our coffee and walking our dog and baby at the same time. With
Yep.
certain dogs, I think that may be attainable, but I think with a
Mhm.
lot of dogs, especially rescues who are coming with any variety of issues, that dog deserves our full attention.
Mhm. Yeah, and not to say that you can't get there, but one thing at a time, one step at a time. Like going back to what you were saying initially, like when I was expecting, we interviewed. I realized I had three dogs at the time with
Mhm.
varying. Tulip was a dog reactive, and I knew like that my son was due to be born in January. I was like knew that okay, I'm not going to be getting out there and walking them. I'm going to have a
Mhm.
tiny little baby,
Mhm.
and we hired a dog walker, and that was the most like I would have paid her like triple what I paid her. Like I didn't realize, and I don't think you do before you have a baby, how much of your self it takes, right? And I had very little to give to my dogs, quite honestly. Like
Mhm.
like I was not training them, and I wasn't. I mean, just like my full attention was on taking care of myself. And
Mhm.
my son, he was born early as well, and so that he had medical and I had medical, and it was an intense time, and that saved my life. Like she came 3 times a week. She picked up the three dogs. She took them out to the woods, beautiful, walked them for an hour. She would send me pictures, and so all my mom guilt went away. I knew they were having an amazing time. She loved them like her own. She brought them
Mhm.
back, and then they would sleep the rest of the day, and the next day too. They would be. And I just remember that being a lifesaver. So reaching out, asking for support, thinking ahead and saying, okay, you know, what am I going to need? What are my needs going to be? And like, how do I make sure everybody's taken care of and it doesn't have to all fall on your shoulders?
Mhm.
Do it,
Yeah.
do
You
it all.
don't have to put yourself last. You
Yeah,
need to put yourself first.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's a perfect place to end this. It feels so
Yeah.
hopeful. It
Oh,
really does. It
absolutely.
feels like permission to, divide and conquer. And that's what you need so that you can give your full self to your new baby and getting through it because it's a hard
Mhm.
transition. Where can people find you, Miranda?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, mindfulcanine.ca. And I also have Instagram and Facebook, Mindful Canine, in both of those avenues. If you go to my website, I have a free ebook on your new rescue dog. And as well, in the show notes, there's a link where you can be added to a mailing list that will let you know I do webinars for reactive rescue dogs. And some my secrets to calm walks, and I also run an 8-week program for reactive dogs as well. So your one-stop shop to get to that place where walks are less stressful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love if you followed along.
Yeah, and I've looked at Miranda's work and I've seen it, and her book is amazing, and her other resources and videos are so good as well. So I strongly encourage you guys to go check those out. Thank you, Miranda, for spending time with us today. I hope we can do this again.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It was great.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Pooch Parenting Podcast on iTunes or on the podcast app of your choice. If you're looking for ongoing support for your family with dogs, be sure to get on the waiting list for my Thriving Parents with Kids and Dogs membership at www.safekidsanddogs.com. And don't forget to follow Pooch Parenting on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks for listening.